And I'm going to put a link in the chat. This is a link to this page. So everybody has that. It's a brand new page. I put it up like 2 days ago for this webinar. So everybody should be able to have access to that. And basically, this webinar is going to be a little bit different than, I don't know, most of the ones that I've done. Rather than having some sort of slide deck or whatever, we're just going to walk through the instructions that are on this page. So that's why I built this page, was to lay out the instructions for how to include website accessibility. So kind of clear things out here for myself. I do have a clone page. So I have both pages open right now. So we can look at the back end, and we can, like, you guys can follow along on the personal side, viewable side, I guess, if you want to call it. How many of you guys are web editors in Drupal? Any of you? Lisa, I know you have access anyway. Oh, Michelle. Hi, Michelle. So we have a few people who are web editors, correct? I will also mention, I tend not to look at chat when I'm presenting. So if there's something that needs to be said, please feel free to unmute and interrupt me, because I don't like bouncing back and forth between screen sharing and chat and everything else. So, okay. Michelle, I know you popped on a little bit after everybody. Did you get the link to this webpage? Or did I send that out before you popped in? I'll just put it back in chat again, just so everybody has it again. There you go. Okay. So, website accessibility. I'm sure you've all heard a little bit about it. You've heard me talk about it, perhaps. If we've done any sort of Drupal training, I may have mentioned it. There are new regulations that are coming in play with the deadline of April 2026 for us, that basically say anything that's web related that can be accessed through a mobile device or a web browser basically needs to be accessible. So this page was put together to kind of walk through the process of implementing accessibility features within Drupal. There are some simple things that can be done to help increase and improve the accessibility of our websites. This is not to say that you need to go back through and completely revamp every website you've ever had or all the materials that you've ever created in the history of ever. It's just to sort of acknowledge that there are simple things that can be done within Drupal, like from here forward. So as you make updates to your website, and this also goes for like digital documentation, but right now we're just specifically focused on websites. As you make updates to the website, as you should be checking your website every couple months, every 6 months, to double check links. If you have external links, you want to double check those and make sure that they're still working. You want to kind of review some of the content and make sure that most of the information or all of the information is still relevant and up to date. So that's kind of in and of itself, but you should be reviewing and double checking your website every 6 to 12 months. All right, so with that being said, what we're going to do again is just kind of walk through this page, and I'm going to flip over to the back side of it. I have a clone page made so we can look at the editor side of things. And zooms in my way again. So once you log in to Drupal, and you come to the edit mode of whatever page you want, this is what you're going to see. So to open each of these individual components, we come over to the right-hand side and click on the edit button. This first section just kind of gives a very brief overview of digital accessibility and why it's important. These links here kind of jump down to the rest of the sections within the page. So we're just going to kind of skip over that for now. So the benefits of digital accessibility, as hopefully perhaps you've heard me or someone else say, accessibility features help people with disabilities, obviously, but they also help lots of other people that don't necessarily have disabilities. A lot of us think of disabilities as being like the permanent kind, like someone who's completely blind or has, missing a limb or confined to a wheelchair or something to that effect. Disabilities can also be temporary, as in having a broken arm, or if you've had like LASIK surgery or cataract surgery, you have temporary, you don't have use of your eyes for a temporary period of time. Situational disabilities could also mean like driving a car. You need to pay attention to what's in front of you and not what's happening in the back seat, right? Any of us who may have had a baby or are a parent knows that you have to sort of live life with only one arm for a certain amount of time because you have a baby attached to your hip. So that's a situational disability. COVID highlighted a number of situational disabilities that we hadn't really had to consider before, one of which being sharing internet access. When the whole household was trying to get online all at the same time, that provided a little bit of a barrier. So these are just sort of examples of the various levels of disabilities. Including accessibility principles in your content helps the majority of those people, not specifically people with disabilities. So that's just a little bit of background. All right, so now moving into the actual principles parts. The first principle is titled Identifying Content Types. This may also be referred to as structuring content. We had, when I say we, I mean basically accessibility advocates, the work group on accessibility principles. So I'm not just speaking for myself, I'm speaking for many people on the campus who advocate and champion for accessibility. When we first started talking about accessibility, we would use the term structuring content, and we would get pushback mostly from faculty members who would say things like, my content is structured, it looks beautiful, it's posted on the web, it's accessible, which is not exactly what we were talking about. So identifying content types or structuring content types basically means using the styling tools that are within Drupal or whatever platform you're working in to create things like headings and lists. When you use the styling tools to create headings and lists, assistive technology such as screen readers can use those to sort of jump through the content. So as sighted readers, we skim content, right? Nobody reads every word of everything. We look for headings that are typically larger. We look for bold text. We look for the bulleted lists. Assistive technology like screen readers can also skim through content or jump from header to header or list to list. So it's very important that we use the styling feature to create those things. So to do that, we simply, again, I'm in the edit mode within a component in Drupal. We highlight the text that we want to style. In this case, I'm going to highlight the words identifying content type. There is a paragraph drop-down menu just above me. We're going to open that, and then we see a list of headings. Now, you'll notice that it starts with heading 2 and not heading 1. That's because heading 1 is the title of the page. And you can think of headings as like an outline style, right? So you have your main bullet point, and then you have sub-bullet points underneath that. Heading 1, the page title, is always going to be the most prominent heading. And in web pages, it's typical that a web page only has one heading 1, which is why it's not listed in this list. So any section that's sort of a subsection below that would be a heading 2. Identifying content types is a subsection of the whole page, so we're going to label that as a heading 2. Then if we have this style a heading label, that's going to be a subsection of the identifying content types. So we're going to label that as a heading 3, and we do the same process. We open up the paragraph dropdown, select the heading 3 label, and this tags it appropriately so that when a screen reader reads this page, it will identify those sections as headers. All right, and here we just have some screenshots that kind of go through the process that I just explained. And then we have style a list, which again is another subheader of the identifying content types. So we're going to once again open up the paragraphs dropdown and select heading 3 for that heading as well. To create lists, okay, it's suggested again to use the styling tools that are within the platform, not just type the number 1 or hit a hyphen and use a hyphen as like a bullet point. We want to use the actual list icons. Those are located sort of in the middle right-ish part of the component editor. And again, to create the list, all we have to do is highlight the necessary content that's already created as a list. So we come up here and we select either the bulleted list or the numbered list icon. And that now tags that content as a list. So a screen reader will read it as list of 2 items, and then it will proceed to read the content that's within those bullets. So not very difficult, fairly straightforward. Does anyone have any questions about using either the heading drop-down menu or the list icons? We'll kind of do this section at a time here so I don't get too ahead of myself with anything. Any questions? Nope, I don't see any in chat. Okay, cool. Then we'll just kind of move along. We're going to close that section to get it out of the way. Identifying content types. Within Drupal, you'll notice this little yellow triangle. Even if you don't make any specific changes, when you open a component, this yellow triangle is telling you that you have changes that need to be saved. So when you're in Drupal, anytime you make any changes to a page, you need to come up here and actually hit the save button to save that page. Otherwise, all the changes will be reverted. All right, we're going to move on to alt text. Is everyone familiar with the concept of alt text? Just as a quick overview, alt text is basically giving a text description to an image. A similar phrase, similar wording is text equivalence, which is kind of the more overarching umbrella. Alt text refers specifically to images. We also do mention captions and transcripts, which are text versions of audio and video components. So we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Anything that's not straight up text within a digital document or a website should have some sort of alt text to it. So again, people who can't see the image directly, screen readers will read the alt text so people can still understand what meaning is being conveyed by that image. This is a little bit of a gray, murky area. The definition of the image or the description of the image can change based on the context that the image is being used in. So there's not really a right or wrong answer per se. It's just what information are you trying to convey by using that image. You can add alt text to a new image when you upload it, or you can add alt text to an image that already exists within Drupal, and we'll go over both. So to add alt text to a new image, you want to find the media icon that's up here on the right-hand side of the editor toolbar. Scroll down just a little bit. I'm going to put my cursor in a very specific place so I can upload an image. So we're going to hit the media icon. If we scroll down just a smidge, this has all of the images that are already uploaded into the media library. We're going to upload a new image. So we want to select this Choose File button that then brings up our local computer. And we're going to select this upload image and then hit the upload button. That will bring the new image in, and then we have this alt text box. And this is, I don't have an alt text prepared, but this is where you would just write a very brief description of what the image is. So view of local computer files. Again, for screenshots, typically you want to include the specific instructions in the body of the website. So the screenshot alt text could be just a very brief overview of what that screenshot is. All right, once we enter the alt text, we hit save and insert. And that will, ooh, that's a very large image. That will put the image right into the web page for us. And now it has alt text. So that's, the next screenshot is just an explanation of what I just showed you. Okay, adding alt text to an existing image. We can upload an image into the media library directly. So we are going to save this page that we're on right now because I have made changes. And we're going to switch directions here. Over on the left-hand side of our admin panel, we're going to come to the content section, which is this little piece of paper icon. And then we're going to go to the media tab. This is where all of our images, files, documents, anything that's considered a media is housed in this media tab. Oh, I forgot where I was. We're adding alt text to an existing image. That's what we're doing. Okay, so we want to open an image that we already have uploaded. So we'll find this, we'll use this link text one, and we select the edit button over on the right-hand side. That opens the image itself, and here is that same little alt text box where I already have text added, but that's where you would put in a brief description of the image for something that's already existing in Drupal. And then, of course, once you've made that change, you want to hit the save button again. And so now we will come back out to our content area, and we're going to open up that clone page once again, kind of get back to where we were. Does anyone have any questions on alt text, either the premise of alt text or actually adding alt text to an image?
I have one quick question.
Yes.
I've noticed in the I've noticed some that have been like extra. Like, do we have to go that extra, or are we okay to just say a picture of two students, unless, wearing college t-shirts, something like that? Like, I mean, do we
Extra is not needed.
necessary? Okay.
The way that I think about it, so I went to a conference a number of years ago and met a blind man, and we were in an alt text session together, and he explained it to me as, I only need to know what I need to know.
Got it.
So if the image is just like, there's a lot of kind of filler images in our website, just to make things pretty and to show pictures of students walking around campus and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
If that's the only purpose of it, then like two students standing outside Murano Campus Center, or two students standing in front of a pink tree
or something. Yeah.
like
Okay.
that's fine. If the purpose of it is to say, Raymond Hernandez earned the whatever award, then that's what you need to say in the alt text.
Okay. That's helpful.
Does that answer your question? Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. I just remember a funny conversation back when we first started talking about all this stuff, where someone said, something about just such detail, like wearing a Patagonia jacket, stuff like that, which seems ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, not unless it's like an advertisement for a specific
right.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
that's why I said it gets a little murky. It's very subjective.
Yes.
So for a lot of times when our images are just decorative and they're just kind of showcasing the campus or showcasing students talking with President Nwosu, or, something to that effect, you can be very vague and very broad.
Got it. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question, because that's one that comes up quite often. Because yeah, it's like, how much detail do I have to put into this? And to that same point, I will also note, when screen readers read alt text, they cannot stop or forward or go back. So like when a person is using a screen reader to read a web page, they can jump from heading to heading, right? So they can kind of skip through sections. They can fast forward, they can rewind, they can listen to things again. In alt text, it's all or nothing. Like, you have to listen to all of the alt text. So that's very disruptive to a web page if you have 3 paragraphs worth of alt text describing exactly what all of the students are wearing, right? So that's like another just kind of, I don't know, visual, I guess. Keep that in your head as you're adding alt text. All right, moving on to embedding links. I think the link practice, well, I know the practice of adding links to a web page has changed very dramatically. And I don't really have a timeline, over the past 3 years or 10 years or whatever. At one point, many years ago, it was just okay to copy the full URL and put that in your web page. That is no longer okay. Please do not do that. Screen readers read the full URL. So like in the case of Oswego.edu, a screen reader would probably read https:// whatever it is, www.oswego.edu. In the case where the URL makes no sense, Google Documents is an awesome example of this. If y'all ever look at the URL for a Google document, it is like 472 characters long, and it makes absolutely no sense. A screen reader will read every single one of those characters. Yeah, hilarious. So hilarious and infuriating, right? Think about if you were a person who couldn't actually, like you're using a screen reader, so you're not actually reading the page, you're listening to it. And all of a sudden, in the middle of a sentence, a screen reader starts reading that whole 472 character thing. Don't do that. So the next step of best practice was to say things like, for more information, click here. And the words click here would be the link. That is no longer best practice either. Please don't do that. The reason for that is because screen reader users can jump from link to link. So they can basically just hear a list of anything that's a link text, which means they're hearing the link text completely out of context with any of the other wording on the web page. So all they're hearing is click here, learn more, click here, learn more, click here. So they're not like, they have no concept of where that link is taking them to. So those are the do not do's. So now the do part, the now best practice is to put the link behind wording that very concisely tells the reader where that link is going to go. So for example, if we're linking to the accessibility website, we want to say things like digital accessibility website. So it doesn't get confused with the accessibility resources website, or Oswego homepage, or like if you're going to an external site, like a government site, you want to name the web page that it's going to, or name the website that it's going to, so people have an idea of where the link is taking them. All right, so in order to do this, I have an example down here. This bolded text is just specifically for our example purposes. I always open the destination web page because I don't want to mess it up by typing it. So we're going to link to our accessibility website. So we're going to flip tabs. We're going to come up here to the very top of the screen and highlight the whole URL. And I'm just going to copy it. Then we're going to flip back to our actual working tab, which is this screenshot is telling you to go to the URL and copy it. Then we find the wording on within the edit mode of the web page we're working on. We're going to highlight accessibility website. Up here in the top editor, right about in the middle, there's a little chain link looking icon. Oops, my screen is not cooperating with me. So we want to open that. And then we paste our URL right into that little dialog box that appears, and hit the enter or return key to kind of save it in place. And again, these screenshots are just showing you exactly what I just told you. And now that we've made that change, once again, we have to save the page. So we're going to hit save, and then we'll take a look at it real quick. So if we scroll down and we find where we just were, I could have used the links that are at the top of the page. I just remembered. So there is our accessibility website that's highlighted and underlined. And if we click on that, it takes us right over to the destination page. All right. Any questions about links? And I'm going to scroll back up to the top of the page and open it back up in edit mode.
I have one question.
Yeah.
So when there's a link, does it take them to the link or just reads them where the link goes? if they're
It
using a
reads
screen
where the
reader.
link goes, and then within screen reader capabilities, you can like click on it or select it,
Got it.
and
Okay.
then it will take them. But essentially, when you're using a screen reader, you can command it to just pull out the links. So a screen reader would read digital accessibility principles, identifying content types, blah, 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 blah. And I don't know exactly how, but somehow you can stop it and say, nope, I want content types. I selected that one, and it'll basically click on it and then take them to the link.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, but they're not getting any of the other information. So if it were to say identify content types by clicking here, all you would hear is clicking here. And then they're like, well, where am I going? I don't know what that is that I'm clicking on. And it's not a difficult practice, but I think the way that we've kind of been trained and conditioned, we sort of have to rethink sentence structure just a little bit sometimes. Because even like me still, I'm like, to get more information, oh no, wait, I have to rethink how I'm going to say that, if you're going to have the actual words be the clickable link. So it just takes a little bit of practice to sort of restructure things. All right. Any other questions about links? We're doing great on time. Text. Oh, I just saw, Michelle, I just saw your comment about text messages being read in the car. Yeah, see, and that's another great example of like accessibility features that are used by someone who's not necessarily disabled. You're in the car, so you're in a situational disability. So you can have text messages read to you, which is basically like the equivalent of using a screen reader to some extent. Not exactly, but the same type of principle. So yes, Michelle, did you have another question?
No, I was going to give a thumbs up, but I.
Oh, that's okay. I do that all the time too. All right. So clear wording and language. We'll move on. Now, in these next two sections, there aren't specific instructions as to how to implement these things, but this is just more of a kind of overview of principles that can be included to help make your web page a little more accessible and more understandable, more usable. So I'm not going to read all of this to you, obviously, but I'm just going to kind of go over what it says. There has been a little bit of confusion and pushback over the concept of using clear, we call it clear wording, clear language. We've also called it plain language, where faculty members have basically said, I'm not dumbing down my content. And that's certainly not what we are asking you to do. So I highly encourage you to go and like read this section carefully. Basically, what we're asking through using clear or plain wording and language is to not overcomplicate things. Okay. This generally pertains to general communications, emails, assignment or test instructions, not necessarily the meat and potatoes of the assignment or test, but like the overall instructions, department memos, that kind of thing. It's basically to help people in lots of different situations. It helps people with learning or intellectual or cognitive disabilities. It helps people who have a very high cognitive load. And it also helps people whose primary language is not English. Now, when I'm talking about cognitive load, this basically means like pretty much all of us can fall into this category, I think. This can refer to the amount of mental energy that you're using in order to accomplish something. So for those of us that have been very busy, we have a lot of things going on, right? You're like meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting, and you don't have any downtime to process any of what's happening. It's really how we focus on things and how we understand something. So all of us at some point have reached that breaking point of cognitive load where we're like, I do not understand anything that's being said to me right now. Just stop talking, right? Choosing clear and plain language helps people understand the first time they read it or see it or hear it, helps them understand if they're in the right place, what information they are supposed to be absorbing, and how they're supposed to be absorbing it. So it's not, again, not necessarily dumbing down the content, but presenting that information or presenting that content in a very straightforward, well-organized, and clear manner. Again, second paragraph, general communication, emails, instructions, syllabi, just kind of like summary content on websites is another good one. When you come to a landing page, you just want like a brief overview of what that website is or what the purpose of that web page is. The general guideline is that these types of communications should be written at the middle school level. I believe it's like 5th through 8th level, 5th through 8th grade. The caveat to that is know your audience, understand what language and information they would be comfortable with, and then write to like the bottom level of your audience, right? So if your audience is specifically lawyers and PhDs and people with a very high level of education, you don't necessarily have to write to them in a 5th grade level, right? That seems really counterintuitive and silly. The point again being that you want the information to be very straightforward and very clear so that people can really absorb it and comprehend it the first time they skim it through, and they don't have to spend 10 minutes of mental energy trying to figure out what the heck you're asking of them or what the heck information they're reading. So down here, just some very brief guidelines. And I will say, this is no offense to anyone ever at all, but in the higher ed world, we tend to have our own little language, and I call it higher ed speak, and it's sort of equivalent to legalese, right? Like we use a lot of big words, we use a lot of long sentence structure. We're a higher education institution. That's kind of expected, right? Like that's the level that we're at. However, again, for some of this general communication, we don't necessarily need to use all of those overcomplicated words. We don't need to use sentences that span 5 lines, right? If your sentence is 5 lines long, it's probably too long. So focus on conversational wording and simple sentence structure. See where you might be able to split your sentence up to make it multiple shorter sentences. Again, know your audience that you're speaking to and know the language and wording that they would be comfortable using. Organize your content in a logical manner. Is anyone here familiar with the inverse pyramid? This came from, I learned this in journalism class a lifetime and a half ago when I was a broadcasting major at Oswego in the 90s. And the general premise of the inverse pyramid, it looks like an upside down triangle, right? So you got the big part of the triangle up at the top, and then the point is down at the bottom. The purpose of the inverse pyramid is to allow print journalists to put all of the most important information right at the top of the article. Because in the print world, you have very limited space. So if your article was too long or there were too many other things that were added to the newspaper and something needed to be cut, articles were cut from the bottom. So if you started with all the fluff and the background and the nice to know, and then you got into the meat and potatoes in the last 2 paragraphs of your article, the editor was going to cut all that out if they needed more room. So you flip it around. You put all of the most important information, the who, what, where, when, and why, the 5 W's, and then baby brother how. Put all of that information at the very top of the page, the top of the article, and then move into kind of the fluff in the background. That way, again, in the print world, when articles got cut, you cut fluff and background stuff that less people cared about. Now, the argument is that in the internet world, you have unlimited space, right? Like web pages can go forever. You don't have the same limitations that we did when we were using actual print. The counter argument to that is that while the actual space is unlimited, people's attention span is not. You have approximately 3 seconds to get people the information that they are looking for on a web page. So if your news article starts with all the fluff and the background and the blah, 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 nice to know, people are not going to read the last 2 paragraphs. They're not even going to get to the meat and potatoes of it because they're going to check out. So all of this to say, organizing your information in a very logical manner and starting with the most important information first applies to web pages. It applies to news articles that are posted on the web. It applies to everything in the digital world. So again, that goes under the plain language guidelines because you want people to be able to absorb the information you're providing them. And you don't want them to have to spend a lot of mental energy, right? Sorting through all of the fluff and the nice to know things before they actually get to the meat and potatoes of everything. That was a very long explanation, but I hope that that put like a good visual in your head. You want to try to use familiar wording, not overly used jargon or specialized terminology, acronyms, idioms, all that kind of thing. Save all of the industry specific language for the experts or experts in training, like your students, right? Like disciplinary content should be at a little bit of a higher level. That's why we're a higher education institution, right? We're teaching people to broaden their minds and sharing information with them. Again, on a generalized level, you don't want to go into all of that industry specific jargon. And then there is a link here on this page for federal plain language guidelines that gives a little more information. It gives some examples. So again, I highly encourage everyone to read this and consider it while you are creating web pages and adding content. Does anyone have any questions about wording and language? No? All right. Perfect. Then we'll finish up with captions and transcripts. And again, I don't go into super deep captions and transcripts. There is a link here for a video section of our tutorials page that goes over very specifically how to use YouTube, Panopto, and Zoom. So for specific instructions on how to do those things, go visit our tutorials page. Just a brief overview of captions and transcripts. As I mentioned before, these are the equivalent of alt text to images. Captions and transcripts are for video and audio files. So for someone who may not be able to hear the video or audio file, you want to be able to provide a text version of that information so they can get the same meaning, the same information as someone who can listen to it. And again, that doesn't necessarily mean that someone has to be, hard of hearing or deaf or have some sort of hearing impairment. We've all been in situations where we just can't hear something. Being at a bar, someone sends you a video and you're like out hanging with your friends and you're at a bar and you want to watch this video, but you can't hear anything because you're in a bar. You could read the caption to it. On the converse side of that, if you're like working in the library, or if you have like a baby is a good example. If you have a baby sleeping with you or sleeping next to you in the same room and you can't be playing videos on loud volume, you may choose to use the captions or use a transcript so you don't disrupt anyone else who's around you. So again, there's lots of reasons for using captions and transcripts. This is to be sure that the same content from the video or the audio file is communicated in a text format. Now there's minor differences between the two. Captions are basically part of the video file. Captions are used for videos and they are part of the video file. They can include things that are not specifically words, like laughter. They can include sound effects. They might sort of describe the scenery that's around the main people. Captions are usually auto-generated by platforms like YouTube or Vimeo. However, just like anything else with AI, it's not perfect. The word Oswego, O-S-W-E-G-O, usually comes up in captions as 3 separate words: us, we, go. So anytime you have a video, even if it is auto-captioned, you want to double check, specifically for names, cities, towns, people, that sort of thing. You want to double check for accuracy, because having a caption that is horribly wrong is almost worse than having no caption at all. It doesn't relay the right information. It could potentially very much confuse the person who's trying to read it. So anytime you use captions, you want to try to double check, even if it's auto-generated, and make sure that there's correct spelling, there's correct punctuation, maybe even capitalization, just to kind of ensure that the correct information is being relayed. Transcripts are a separate file. They are typically a document. Transcripts are sometimes timed. So you might see like a time stamp. So at, 11:42, Kate DeForest said this. And at 11:43, Michelle Bandela said this. It kind of breaks things down a little more specifically than captions do. Transcripts, again, can include things that are seen and heard, as well as things that are spoken. So things like laughter, a description of scenery, music, a type of music, rather than just saying music is playing, it might say like spooky music is playing or cheerful music is playing in the background while people dance on the side or something like that. And again, transcripts and captions both help people who are non-native English speakers. They help people understand things better. In my house, my kids did this. They turn the captions on anytime the TV is on. And it was not my idea, but I am all for it because it helps me understand things better when I can read it and hear it. Again, for things like names, especially in TV shows where names are like completely made up. It's like, I have no idea what they just said. If I can read it, it helps my brain understand it a little bit better. Transcripts, I will also say too, it can be used by screen readers. Obviously, screen readers can skim through the transcripts because it's a document. It also helps with, I believe it helps with SEO. And for people who might be fast readers, they can just skim the content rather than having to sit through the video and listen or read the captions on the screen. You can just skim through the document and pull out the information that you're looking for. So any questions on captions or transcripts?
Do you know if you have to have like a specific type of YouTube account or whatever, or can you, when they're auto-generated, can you go back in and edit them? I don't know if I've ever tried to do that, but I definitely noticed the Oswego thing, my name, and a few other things that get messed up.
Yeah, names in specific are usually problematic. I would recommend reviewing the YouTube video that I linked to on the tutorials page. Yes, to answer your question, yes. Once something is auto-generated or once a video is saved or uploaded, you typically can go back and edit it. I forget the exact process because I don't do that very often, but I'm pretty sure that's outlined in the YouTube video.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah, so you can go in and recreate it or update it. Another thing I will note, because this gets asked quite a lot, I can't recite the exact guidelines for videos, but I don't believe you need both captions and a transcript. I think you need just one or the other, which serves as text format for that video or audio file. Again, audio files don't have captions. Audio files are strictly transcripts. But for a video, I believe that if you have one or the other, you're kind of covered as far as like the guidelines go. If you wanted to have both, of course, that is, encouraged because that's more accessibility built in. It's more options for people to review that information, but I don't think it's absolutely necessary. So any other questions about any of the content that I covered today? Another thing that I just thought of for editing web pages, I didn't include this link, but I will add it to the web accessibility page, is the link to the overall Drupal training guide. So I went in a little bit in detail as to how to go into Drupal and how to use the editor side of things to include some of this. I will put a link to the overall Drupal training guide, just so it's in the same proximity as the accessibility information. So if anybody needs to review that, you can get to it easily. Okay, that's all the information that I had. I can't think of anything that I'm missing. But if anybody
Really
has any
helpful.
questions, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Really helpful. Just
Good.
some of it's refresher, but as we're gearing up for, total Title II compliance, and as I'm thinking about planning for the fall and tweaking things for the fall, this is good to get this information earlier than later.
Yeah, good.
Hey, you'd be happy to know that I asked Scott to add it to our strategic plan as one of the academic affairs goals.
Good.
Ability Title II. I said, I think if we have to do the law, it should be a strategic plan option. So yay.
And that's like Oswego is in a pretty good spot overall. As far as the SUNY schools go, we are considered one of the leaders in the digital accessibility space. We're in like the top 3 or 5,
Nice.
whatever. And we've been doing this work for quite some time, which has been fantastic. So we are sort of ahead of the game. But I mean, Lisa, as you said, and Michelle, you just alluded to it too, we've got these regulations that are coming down that basically say by April of 2026, everything online has to be accessible with some exceptions.
Right.
That's not completely
Yeah.
a true statement, but that's kind of what we're looking at. So the more that you can like implement these 1% things at a time, the easier it's going to be. So you're not like, oh my God, I have to go back and make everything I've ever created accessible. Like just do it one little percent at a time, and it becomes a habit and it becomes easier to integrate. And then before you know it, you're doing it and you don't even think about it. And you're like, oh, look at that. My website's mostly accessible. I don't really have a whole lot to worry about. So
well, and I think it's also important, not that you should have to do this, but it's also important, like when you give real life examples of someone who doesn't maybe have a disability, but that uses it like in the car. Or I do that on my TV all the time when, my boyfriend forgets to leave the room when he answers his phone and I'm watching a program. So I'll be like, dude, like manners, so I have to put on the closed captioning so I can hear what's happening, or I pause it, but sometimes I don't want to. So
that's the big, I mean, that's another like kind of 1% shift is like people think of, accessibility equals disabilities. And it's like, we all use various accessibility features. And so the more we can kind of integrate that and add it into our websites, the basic premise or like the basic goal is to allow the majority of people to use our digital content without having to think about how they're going to use the content. So like you just open up a web page and you can use it. You don't have to be like, oh, I can't read this PDF. I can't see this thing because, for whatever reason. So I try to include as many like real life non-disability examples as possible.
Because it gives people like more ownership too. Like, I think that helps. We should all be doing the right thing, but I think giving ownership for like, this is going to help everyone. This is going to be beneficial to everyone. Like I think about transcripts.
You don't want to be that guy that leaves a barrier in place, like I say that guy, I know that's not like completely PC language, but like, you don't want to be the dude that like leaves that barrier in place that prevents someone from using your content. Yeah. Michelle, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say like I would say the last year, the styles in like Word documents and things have been so helpful, not only because now I'm following that process, but also having the outline. Like of the headers on the side to be able to, go to where you need to. So it's really helpful in general, but I never understood years. I mean, it's probably been a couple of years I've understood, hopefully, but I never understood what those were for. And I'm like, but I want to use my own text, like formatting. But, like knowing you can change the formatting, but it still outlines it is great. So
I will say also just a little plug for myself. Next Friday, I am giving a PowerPoint presentation. So accessibility within PowerPoints. So invite you all to that. I have a PowerPoint template that I will share that's on the Marcom website. I'll share that with everybody and we'll kind of go through how to make PowerPoints more accessible. But Word documents is like that's a whole separate beast. But it's definitely there. So I did throw my email in the chat. If anyone has any questions or wants to follow up or whatever, please feel free to send me an email. So
thank you for doing this.
All right. Thank you very much for being here today, everybody. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day and have a great weekend ahead.
Thanks, Kate.
Thank you, John.